Hey everyone, my name is Mariana, and I am the host of the Commitment to Growth podcast and founder of the platform Commitment to Growth. I am a resilience coach, and my passion is making personal growth information accessible, actionable, and evidence based for the modern day ambitious 20 something. Thank you for choosing the Commitment to Growth podcast today, and let's dive right in. Hello. If you're new, welcome. And if you're not new, welcome back to the Commitment to Growth podcast. This is your host, Mariana speaking, coming at you today with actionable, raw, vulnerable, and enjoyable personal growth and self-development information. If you are here, it is probably because you listened to part 1 last week and you were way too excited, hopefully, and you wanted round 2. So this episode is all about the follow-up to the pillars in my life that I consistently revisit time and time again and adjust accordingly to the needs that I have within a given season. And part 2 here is number 6 through to 10. Again, I hope that you enjoyed part 1. I thoroughly enjoyed recording it. I thought that those first 5 were very kind of, components of your daily routine and very what should we call materialistic, if that's the right word. I don't know. Components, pillars of life that you can kind of revisit often. And I'm excited about points 6 through 10 because I find that these are way more about how you are consistently building your relationship with yourself, because I think that this is a huge component of having a quote unquote warrior mentality, is not only how you are showing up on your outside, but how you are showing up on your inside every single day. One of the mantras that I have recently adopted from the angry therapist John Kim, you've heard me talk about him before on this platform, is the call is coming from inside the house. And I want you to keep that in mind as we go through this episode, go through this part 2, because I really think that in order to manifest any kind of identity, to step into any form of being, whether it is, warrior mentality, Spartan mentality, or couch potato mentality, it starts from the inside out. And that is the really beautiful part about developing your identity and your sense of self. It is, how are you doing the inner work to discover who you want to be and what that means to you, to then manifest it into your outside world. So this is what part 2 really is all about. It's kind of the bread and butter of this episode. So again, the call is coming from inside the house. Keep that in mind. Without further ado, points 6 through 10 here about how to build a warrior mentality, a mindful warrior mentality at that. Number 6, use people, places, and situations that trigger you as an opportunity to free yourself. Now, I say this with an asterisk because there are certain forms of trauma that you do not want to expose yourself to again. But a lot of our triggers, like avoiding communication and conflict, things that annoy us, or things that make us think of past people who treated us a certain way or brought up an insecurity with us, keep us stuck and keep us as victims to our nervous system's response to these triggers. I'm not saying now go look for these triggers on a regular basis, because that enters the realm of kind of continuous suffering. And while I do think that exposure therapy is important, it's kind of like a bell curve, right? Like if the peak of this curve is kind of the ideal form of exposure therapy, where you are exposing yourself to it and overcoming it, the other side of that one is too much exposure therapy that is just making you relive things over and over again. And that's not what we want here. We don't want to re-traumatize ourselves or always be on kind of a harsh healing grind. But I do think it's important that whenever you sense yourself being triggered or returning back to a time that is mirrored by a situation that you're in, or something that somebody said in a moment, or something that you're experiencing in a moment, use this as an opportunity to become consciously aware of your thought patterns, your inner narratives, and conceptions that you have, to see the roots of your discomfort. Because triggers, I like to think of them as a start to a domino effect right? The reason we feel triggered is because we are suddenly exposed to something that takes us back down, whether it's memory lane or to some kind of core belief that we have, that then manifests itself as an outer negative experience, which can have, often ruin our day if we don't catch ourselves. And the thing about being self aware and the thing about being whole within yourself is about meeting these sudden bursts of emotion and these triggers with compassion, but also getting to a place where you are able to dismantle the thought pattern right away. As soon as you feel yourself going down memory lane or going, your head is spinning with all these negative thoughts and you're talking mad at yourself, you can stop yourself and separate yourself from what is in fact you and what is in fact a thought pattern that has been embedded in your mind for too long that needs to be broken down or taken apart so that you can understand it. Over time, when you learn to just be an observer, it fosters a completely different relationship with yourself that is rooted in, like I said, compassion and understanding, and later confidence, right? Because when these triggers go too far, when we let the thought patterns run for too long, it results in a very negative nervous system response. And the thing about being in anxiety or being in a stressful state after a trigger is that we are way less likely to be able to regulate ourselves because now, you know, at a physiological level, our stress hormones are running on high. We're not thinking straight anymore because when we're stressed, we don't think straight. Biologically, we don't think straight. Stress pulls blood away from our prefrontal cortex, and which is the site responsible for decision making. And because of that, we can't think rationally anymore, which is why it's so important to build the skill of stop. Where is this thought leading me? How can I bring myself back to peace first, peace above all else, peace, before I then go and take this apart to understand myself better and understand this trigger better. Why this is so important is because self-awareness means, among many other things, getting to a place where you can distinguish yourself from your thoughts, and especially the thoughts that don't serve you and the thoughts that are keeping you trapped. And in order to be present, in order to practice mindfulness, and in order to show up as your best self in a relationship, in your professional aspects, in your friendships, in your fitness lifestyle, whatever that looks like, it is all about sitting with your thoughts, weaving out the ones that don't serve you, and understanding why you've held them in the first place so that you don't continue to run from a place of negative thought and belief, and therefore you keep hindering yourself from doing big things that are limited by a schema that you have about yourself that isn't necessarily true. So, number 6, use people, places, and situations that trigger you as an opportunity to free yourself. Number 7, always have a physical goal that you are working towards. Always. If you don't particularly favor athletics, this can be as easy as getting 5,000 steps per day or going for a walk 3 times a week. It doesn't have to be something elite or competition based. However, I say always twice because your body craves movement and it needs movement and some form of physical activity to function at your highest state. Physical exertion is one of the most foolproof methods of building resilience because it enhances your capacity to push yourself through discomfort, to realize how you are a victim to your discomfort when you quit halfway through things, and it trains you to fight back against your mind when it's trying to get you to quit. How many times have you been like 30 seconds or a minute into your plank when you set a goal to hold it for like 2 or 3, or you're in a yoga position, or you're doing pull-ups, whatever that looks like, you're like on a run and you're like, I want to quit so bad. This hurts. I don't like this. I'm sore. Or your mind, kind of like what we talked about in part 1 about how your mind is naturally inclined to discomfort or to comfort. That would be nice. It starts giving you excuses to quit, right? Now, I say this with discretion because you should never fight through injury based pain, nausea, things like that, where your body is asking you to stop. That's a very important thing to distinguish, and I want to make that very abundantly clear. I don't I don't think that's always healthy to ignore signs from your body, but it's a very different thing when you are listening to your mind versus your body. And the cues are very different in that your body will slow you down. Your body will start pointing to signs like pain, fatigue, soreness that might not be the best to push through. You'll get that intuitive feeling of, oh, I probably shouldn't push through this. Oh, I had a bad feeling about coming out today. Now that I'm here, I am still questioning it. It's a lot more intuitive based versus when your mind is running on kind of like monkey mind and sending you cues to quit because it's just not wired for discomfort. You'll feel it at a mental level. You'll hear it as thoughts in your head saying, again, every excuse. It's too long of a mileage. Maybe maybe I should only do 5 instead of 6 reps, whatever that looks like. The difference is that one is mental and one is intuitive. Keep that very closely in your head because it can be, especially if you're starting out in physical challenges, it can be really hard to distinguish between the two. But I have never, ever, ever regretted listening to my body. I can affirm that for sure. But I sure as heck have regretted listening to my ego. They're two different things. Now, back to the main point is that having a physical goal allows you to not only gift your body with movement and grow confidence as you overcome physical challenges, but it also obviously helps you show up better in health, which then translates into every other pillar that we've talked about in this podcast episode, in this podcast series, is that physical health and mental and emotional health are not mutually exclusive. You cannot have one without the other. Not to mention, resilience is an umbrella term to define resilience in a ton of realms in your life, right? Building resilience in one aspect of your life will naturally transfer to other aspects of your life. And physical challenges are a great way to build resilience because physical exertion and physical growth is a lot easier to quantify and measure and track progress in than other areas of your life, like emotional maturity or emotional intelligence that you are developing through reflection and meditation, whatever that looks like for you. Sign up for different opportunities, especially ones that you've never tried before, to experience the vulnerability of starting as a beginner and build confidence working up from there. This is especially true if you've never tried sports or if you've been in one sport for too long that might, you don't feel like you're being pushed in anymore. We often find that we often think that like, oh, well, I've been to the gym for like the last 10 years of my life, so this is all I really need to physically exert myself. Really? Go play like beach volleyball or something that you've never tried before and see how your body responds or how your body shows you cues as to, no, some areas of our strength or our endurance are actually weaker than we thought. Physical exertion is one of the best ways to build resilience and confidence, but also to enhance your humility within yourself. And that's a huge aspect of being a well-rounded individual overall, but also I think having this what we call quote unquote warrior mentality is like, how do you have the humility within yourself to admit that there is always, always, always room for growth? So, pillar number 7, always have a physical goal that you are working towards. Always. Number 8, get so comfortable with leaning into and questioning your emotions that you become the lead in your life instead of your emotions ruling you. This is kind of similar to point number 6, but this is a lot more as it pertains to how you become actively engaged with your intuition, your higher purpose, and therefore your higher self. I think it's really important that if we, again, expect to manifest a life from the inside out and expect to show up as the best version of ourselves, which is what I see as a warrior mentality, that we put more effort into learning and understanding our own personal cues and our own personal insight and our own personal intuition rather than spending more time reading books and podcasts and listening to, I don't know, YouTube videos about how everybody else is living their life in discipline or self-growth or whatever that looks like for them. I think it's incredibly important. I think it makes this journey super enjoyable to take in this information and apply tips from different people into our own lives. However, something that I brutally had to learn this year is that when you spend more time reaching for somebody else's words and opinions and advice on how you should be living your life, it is in some degree a method of procrastination from taking the ownership to build your own formula or to get to know yourself well enough to understand not only yourself, but how you function best and how you should actually be living your life. Not just based off of how other people are living theirs and what's worked for them, but what is actually successful for you and for who you are. I don't think it's talked about enough, and I don't think that we emphasize that as a point enough, is that one of the most enjoyable but also most hard things about the the journey of inner work is that you will come to realize things about yourself as you grow, as you age, as you go deeper, that are not in alignment anymore with versions of your past self, but also with what everybody else is doing. And you always have a choice to continue on the path of, well, this is what everybody else is doing, so I'm going to keep doing that because that is what's guaranteeing everybody else results. Or I've realized now that this is not working for me, whether it is a particular career, a particular goal, a particular relationship, and how am I pivoting to stay within my utmost truth and to stay on that path? That is Authenticity is one of the hardest aspects of our soul and our humanity to step into and embrace, because very oftentimes it does not parallel some of the closest people in our life or what we are being told is what's best for us. But when you become so comfortable leaning into your emotions, when you start to feel about a certain way about, a career that you always thought you were going to do, and then all of a sudden you start feeling like your mind is shifting, or you've been in a relationship for a long time and all of a sudden you start doubting it, or you start having second thoughts about it, when you are in a job that you've been so comfortable at for so long, but then all of a sudden you get a new opportunity, even though that opportunity is riskier, but this one is the one that you're currently in is keeping you comfortable and more stable. The second that you choose to start fostering a relationship where your emotions don't scare you, but rather you welcome what they have to say to you, you it's so hard to live with regret, and it's so hard to live out of alignment with yourself, because the minute that you start listening to your intuition and you start embracing it, you are always by default living from your highest truth. God, I could do a whole podcast series about this. We could do a whole podcast show about that topic, and I will in the future, but it is such an underrated skill, and it is the one that not built and not taken time to develop, the one that leaves most people the unhappiest, and it's the one that leads to all the midlife crises and the broken relationships and the career switches that end up being more catastrophic than they had to be, because we don't listen until it's loud and very, very clear and it's detrimenting our physical and emotional health. But what if you started leaning into your intuitive cues from the get-go so that you could start making change slowly rather than having to pivot all at once because you are so out of touch with yourself and feeling so out of body and so out of alignment that you are now ill and not showing up as your best self. So, number 8, get so comfortable with leaning into and questioning your emotions that you become the leader in your life instead of your emotions ruling your day to day. Number 9, become comfortable within uncertainty by developing adaptability. I think this one goes hand in hand with the last point about that is more kind of spirituality oriented. Number 9, I think about this so much. I It's unrealistic to expect that life will always give us answers, right? I mean, it's always shouting answers in our direction, but we don't always know how to interpret them. Or we don't always know what the best course of action is to take when we are having an identity crisis or when we are questioning our career or relationship. And so, sitting in uncertainty when we are so wired as human beings for control and therefore certainty is one of the finest, most underrated skills to cultivate as well. To be kind of like a self aware, but also just at peace human being, I think. When you can learn to master the duality of having a long term vision for yourself, but also presently taking life one day at a time, not only are you living in your present and therefore spending more of your energy in your present, which is where you belong, because the future is, in the end, a figment of your imagination until it manifests itself into what you're envisioning, with 9 times out of 10 is not even exactly what you envisioned, right? When you can sit in your present without having the answers, without with while letting go of the need to know, while letting go of the need to go on to the next step, you are living where you need to be. And you are living in peace because you are putting faith into the universe, whatever you call your higher power, that what is meant for you is coming your way. Again, this is a more spiritual approach, but I think that we are spiritual beings. That's my core belief. And therefore, when you can sit in uncertainty and be adaptable with that, if you don't have answers right now, what's your next best thing? If you're having a career crisis because you don't know what you want to do, are you going and finding different jobs? Are you going and finding different people to talk to about what they're doing? Are you attending career fairs? Like, what are you doing to meet yourself halfway and meet your uncertainty halfway, to bridge the gap between knowing and not knowing? I think that's what we're tested on in periods of uncertainty is, instead of going into fight or flight or freeze or seeking instant gratification, instant answers with, you should forgive yourself and you should never get down on yourself for if it's something that you've done in the past or something that you're experiencing right now, because it's also an innate mechanism of ours to have so many options that we've shut down. But when you develop adaptability within uncertainty to be actionable and to use your inner compass to guide you towards the next action, because even if you don't know, like I said, even if you don't know what the next step is, you're always getting cues as to where you could turn to figure out what it is. Therefore, how are you being adaptable within uncertainty to use uncertainty as an opportunity for you to come closer to your highest truth? Again, that can be a career crisis where you're going to different places to ask around for information, or if you're struggling within your relationship, are you maybe having difficult conversations with your partner, or are you going to see a relationship counselor? If you're struggling with finances, are you looking up YouTube videos on how people are managing their financial spreadsheets, or are you talking to an advisor? It's about how you approach problems with openness to see why you're uncertain, what uncertainty is trying to teach you. That, I think, is such a key component of, I think, just being like a calm and more generally a peace human being, is like, again, the fine balance of taking one day at a time, but also having a greater purpose and a vision that you might be working towards, that you are willing to have it be malleable as well. Because another part of this is, again, our futures are only a figment of our imagination in the time that we are envisioning them, right? Therefore, at any given moment, as we evolve and as we grow and as we change, those visions can change. And when they do, how are you meeting that change? How are you evolving as that vision evolves as well? How are you letting go of what you think needed to happen and instead embracing what might need to happen for you to be the happiest version of yourself and for you to be the most true version of yourself? Because life is always guiding you in that direction. Life is always guiding you towards being your most authentic self. It's just that sometimes we are so married to what we think needs to be that we don't have the openness and open-mindedness to see what could be instead. So, number 8, or number 9, I should say, become comfortable with the uncertainty by developing adaptability. And dun da da da. Number 10, drum roll please. Thank you, thank you. I heard you. I heard you do it on your kitchen table. Number 10, get good at knowing when you are hustling for the sake of hustling and embrace balance. How's that for number 10? I bet it was the least thing you were expecting. Well, I think that for you to have a quote unquote warrior mentality, you have to know when you are putting on the mask of what a society dictates as a warrior versus what you internally and authentically believe to be the, again, warrior version of yourself. That is one of the finest lines drawn in the face of reality, right? And I think this last point is a culmination of everything that we've been talking about throughout this episode, but especially in the second part, is that the call is coming from inside the house. Your life begins the minute that you begin manifesting it from the inside out, not from the outside in. And when you have your priorities in line, when you are so sure about what is important to you, about what you value, whether it's sport, whether it's business, whether it's family and friends, whether it is traveling, whether it is art, whatever that looks like for you, and in what ratios those things are important to you. And remember that those ratios can change at a given time, right? You could be going through a season of life where you just went on vacation and now you want a bit less social interaction. So your art and your sport are taking up more of your percentage of your pie graph of time. And then all of a sudden something happens in life and you need more social interaction. Therefore, that percentage rises on your pie chart, right? But when you, I think, can embrace the intricacy and complexity of the human existence, which is to exist with hobbies, like multiple hobbies at a time, and within community and within tons of endeavors at once, rather than just being glued to this idea, unless this works for you. I'm not shaming on this at all, that like, you wake up at 5 a.m. and you do your sport, you do your job, you meditate, then you go to bed, right? Or other way around, you do business and then it's like 2 hours of family time and then your night routine and then you go to bed, right? I think that being a having an enjoyable, memorable human experience comes with surrendering the need to always be on, to always be grinding. And it's about acknowledging when it is time to flip that switch off. And I think that more often than not, you will find that you can switch it off more than you are giving yourself the opportunity to. This last semester, as I mentioned earlier in this episode, I began experiencing a lot of resistance because as I was making friends and as friend groups in my program were merging and we were spending a lot more time together, I ran into a lot of conflict with myself and therefore kind of even developers oh my gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? Ah, anger? Come on, somebody say it. It starts with an R. Resentment. Thank you. Thank you to the person in the back. Develop resentment towards some of my friends because they would ask me to come out with them and to hang out with them after school, and for with no ill intention other than they want to see me and spend time with me. But then I was so hung up on this idea of like, no, 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 no. Like, I told myself I was going to go home and write an article or write a podcast episode and study and meditate. And it decreased people's dependence on me. It made them resent me for not mirroring their effort with my own, for seeing them and spending time with them. And that to me hurt more than not doing the task that I was so married to doing, whether it was record an episode or, study for X amount of time. And as I let go slowly of that need for control, I started to realize that I could study in less time or bulk record episodes some weeknights so that I was winning time to spend with other people. Or simply put, and this is an honest reality check here, is that, and I spoke about this on TikTok recently, that I accepted that because community was at the forefront of my priority in life, my personal relationships, and because that will always take precedence over anything else that I do in my life, there are some goals of mine that will take me longer to manifest because I am taking them at a slower pace than if I was completely giving up some of my community time, or even, more than 50%. They're going to take me longer time because I'm putting what's important to me at the forefront of my priorities. And therefore, the flip side of that is that it is making the time that I dedicate to my endeavors and my goals much more meaningful, because it isn't this, I have to sit down right now because I told myself and because society tells me that this is how I need to operate to be hustling and to, bust out this goal in an appropriate amount of time, in an appropriate amount of time that is going to make headlines, right? Like 23-year-old builds a business in 3 months. No. No. I would rather it take me 3 damn years if it means that I spend a little bit longer looking into one of my best friend's eyes when we're laughing, or trying something new with one of my friends, going on a date with a stranger that came up to me at a bookstore, I don't know, and having the presence within those activities. And also in other hobbies, right? Like, I started playing guitar recently. I am going climbing, like rock climbing today for the first time in months. I started training for a half marathon. I was so not present in those activities, or wouldn't even have fathomed beginning those activities, because I was so married to the, no, I need to have these few priorities that are taking up all of my time. No, 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 no. You're here to live a human experience that is complex and well-rounded and experiential, amongst so many other things. And you will live it fully for all its potential when you truly sit yourself down and ask yourself, what is actually important to you? Is it success? Or is it a night out with your mom? Is it a Sunday coffee with your dad or your partner? Get real good at knowing what is important to you and why, and in what kind of quantities you want it and need it, because that's a core part too, that you can direct your attention accordingly as you ebb and flow with the seasons, but also when you are tempted to go back to narratives that are not yours to hold and are not yours to carry, above all. And I think I want to bring this full circle to this idea of warrior mentality that I've been repeating throughout this episode, which is such a catchy name, but all that to say, you will live a life so fierce and so admirable and so fun and exciting when you are living it from your utmost truth. And that can only happen when you define on your own damn terms what being the lead warrior in your life means to you and looks like to you, most importantly. Because the second that you start listening to other people and copying their formulas, again, copying is very distinct from being inspired by other people. So I'll say I use copying for this example. But the minute that you start copying and pasting somebody else's life formula for success into your own, there's a really good chance that you're going to run into a lot of disappointment, because the beautiful thing about being human is that none of us are made the same and none of us are made equal as it pertains to our likes, dislikes, values, priorities, insecurities, things that excite us, ambitions, all of that. And because of that, when you can embrace that this life is yours to create from your own inside out formula, you will stop being disappointed by not living life and not seeing the results that you want to see because you are trying to live somebody else's life. That is what being the lead warrior in your life is all about. It is living life on your own terms, whatever that looks like for you. Because at the end of the day, by this argument, nothing matters, right? We're all gonna die anyways. No, I'm kidding. I'm not trying to I'm not trying to derail the entire point of this conversation, but it is true to some degree. I'm just saying. But anyways, those are my 10 pillars, the ones that I continuously revisit in my own life to be at the forefront of my life and be the one leading my life and the change and growth that I'm manifesting into my life. I encourage you to explore them. I encourage you to reflect on these pillars in your own life. But above all, I encourage you to ask yourself first what you need most right now and what your soul needs most right now before you start deciding what it means to be a warrior in life. Because it's not until you ask yourself the question of what's important to you and what you need that then the rest comes on its own, that then the rest has the room to answer its call to. Get real clear on who you are, what you want, and what you need first before you start designing the template of your life, because otherwise it's going to be a very directionless template. Thank you so much again, everybody, for tuning into this episode. I hope that you found it helpful. I hope that it spoke to your soul. I know I had a wonderful time making it myself. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the show on iTunes and or Spotify or whatever podcast platform you're listening on. It helps get the word out to more people. If you enjoyed this episode or you have any questions or you want to tell me about how you tried one of these pillars, please DM me on Instagram. It's at Commitment to Growth. Or you can also DM me on TikTok. It is also at Commitment to Growth. I would love to hear how you are doing on your own personal growth journey, if there's anywhere I can help. And a reminder that my free community for personal growth enthusiasts who want to share their story, who want to receive input from other people who are on their journey of self-discovery, is now open. It is the Commitment to Growth community on Circle. Completely free to join, no paid membership, none of that. That's not what we're here to do. It should be personal growth information that is accessible to all. That's what I believe. So you can click the link in my bio on Instagram. Again, it's at Commitment to Growth, and there's a link for you there to sign up and join today, free of charge. I cannot wait to see you in there. And again, thank you for choosing CTG as your daily dose of personal growth and development. I will see you in the next episode.